On this Sunday night, the Ottawa occupation is over. Police secure Parliament Hill, but the downtown remains in lockdown.
This is not the normal state of our city.
The measures police are taking to prevent protesters from returning. More military maneuvers near Ukraine spark a last-ditch effort at diplomatic talks.
Could be really the biggest war in Europe since 1945.
Plus, COVID and the Queen. Well wishes for Her Majesty after the 95-year-old tests positive for the virus. And Olympic look back, the highs and lows of the Beijing Winter Games.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
For the first time in more than 3 weeks, the streets of downtown Ottawa are largely quiet and calm. Now, the police operation isn't over yet. Officers remain in the area around Parliament Hill, clearing out the last of the protesters and working to ensure they can't return. Police are also removing vehicles and debris left behind by the demonstrators. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The nation's capital looks very different than it did just 24 hours ago, but the city is not back to normal just yet. Heavy security measures remain in place in the downtown core, and there's no word on exactly when those might be lifted. Our David Akin has been covering the protests since the start, and he joins us with the latest from Ottawa. David.
Well, Jeff, the chief objective of police on this Sunday is to hold the ground that they won on Saturday. And so, as a result, throughout the parliamentary precinct, blocks and blocks, you've seen this installed. 2-meter high, strong fencing to keep people out. And beyond that, stretching for further blocks throughout the downtown core, look at this. One police checkpoint after another. There's dozens of them. On Wellington Street, the road running by all the parliament buildings, relative peace and calm, free of the trucks, protests, and encampments of the last few weeks. On Sunday, police continued to clear other streets of abandoned vehicles and pushed pockets of other protesters further away from the core and made more arrests. Still, it's not clear when the Trudeau government will lift or suspend the Federal Emergencies Act.
We will eliminate them as quickly as we are able, and the response is only what was necessary in order to protect Canadian interests.
Bill Blair did clarify one aspect of the most controversial powers in that act, the freezing of bank accounts for those aiding the occupying protesters. Those who donated $25 here, $50 there, need not worry, he says. Their accounts will not be frozen.
We're not concerned about, who made a donation to what. That's not a matter for the police, and it's not a concern to us.
Meanwhile, Ontario's Special Investigations Unit has assigned 8 people to look into some of Saturday's police activity, including the discharge by police of a weapon that fires plastic projectiles into a crowd of protesters that police said were getting violent. And another allegation that a woman suffered a serious injury after being struck by a mounted police officer. Police say that last allegation is an example of the misinformation deliberately spread by the protesters.
There was 2 members of the protesters who did collide with the horses. They fell down. They immediately got back up and started to again engage in their protest and demonstration activity.
Ottawa police also updated some stats from Saturday's operation, and here they are. More than 50 vehicles towed and seized, nearly 200 people arrested, and of those, 107 are facing criminal charges. Jeff.
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Many residents of Ottawa are breathing a sigh of relief tonight after 3 weeks of complaints about harassment, noise, and unease during the demonstration. Sean O'Shea joins us from inside the security zone. So, Sean, you were out speaking with residents today. What did they have to say?
Jeff, we set out to due east of here to the Byward Market area. That's an area that's very popular with both tourists and with locals alike. And many businesses, most businesses in that area were closed on Friday and Saturday because of the police action. And the biggest shopping mall, or one of the biggest shopping malls in Canada, the Rideau Centre, remains closed after 3 weeks. Now, some residents did venture out today, many for the first time in a while. They told us they were relieved that the protesters and those trucks have finally gone. Here's what some of them had to say to us earlier.
It's just wonderful to walk out and not have to worry about being actually harassed or harmed.
It's great. It feels great that, like my friend was saying, that things are getting back to normal. And while, there's a heavy police presence now, at least at least it's the police and not a bunch of random people from outside of our city coming in and shutting everything down.
And I think some of these businesses probably are really hurting for patrons. So I thought, okay, let's walk around, let's see what's going on and see if we can, get a coffee somewhere or walk around and just see what's open.
Now, not everything is back to normal. Those are some of the prisoner transport vehicles just down here from Parliament Hill. The War Memorial there were some officers taking photos there. This area is still all sealed off, so things are definitely not back to normal as people in Ottawa know normal. But those protesters who had been here for 3 weeks, they have gone, the honking is gone, the diesel has gone, and at some point, this area will be restored to what people in Ottawa know as normal. We just do not know when that will happen as yet. Jeff.
Sean O'Shea in a very quiet nation's capital. Thanks, Sean. Moving now to another police investigation in northern BC. RCMP officers are hunting for suspects after a brazen attack on the worksite of a natural gas pipeline. Coastal GasLink says its facility and 9 workers were attacked early Thursday morning. Police say the damage to the site, including buildings and equipment, is estimated around $6 million. Imad Agahi joins us now from near the site with an update. Imad.
Since Thursday morning, RCMP investigators from across the province of BC have been gathering in the northern communities of Houston and Smithers to investigate what they are calling a criminal act, and now we can see some of the evidence that they are working with. The worksite is remote. More than 60 kilometers of service road separate this natural gas pipeline construction zone from Houston in BC's Bulkley Valley. Operations here have stopped as police are on site investigating.
There's a clear escalation of violence. This was in the middle of the night. This is a coordinated effort by multiple people.
The RCMP and Coastal GasLink, the pipeline company, say the alleged attack happened shortly after midnight on Thursday. It's claimed around 20 people dressed in camouflage and masks, carrying power tools and an axe, confronted 9 overnight workers at the site. Those workers fled for their own safety, and according to the pipeline company, the attackers stormed onto the site, hijacking heavy equipment to cause what police tell us is an estimated $6 million in damage to machinery and infrastructure. RCMP also say the alleged attackers impeded the responding officers who were traveling the only road to the site by throwing smoke canisters at them. Burning logs were placed on the roadway, and booby traps were set up as well. At one point, a large school bus had been parked blocking that road to the site. One officer was injured in the response, but no arrests could be made.
How did the attackers get away if there was just one road to come in?
So from my understanding, there's several trail systems that are off of the side roads and offshoots. It was dark.
From blockades to injunctions and arrests, the project has been through a myriad of pipeline disputes. But this weekend, RCMP told us there's no evidence yet connecting this incident to previous protest movements. This is despite what appears to be clear anti-pipeline graffiti on one of the damaged trailers. The RCMP, as mentioned, is investigating this as a criminal act and not a breach of injunction, which they have been previously enforcing. And we're also told by police officers and investigators that they have obtained video surveillance from the site that may be released if it helps further their investigation. Jeff.
Imad Agahi near Houston, BC. Thanks. Canada's foreign minister is cancelling plans to travel to Germany for a security summit and instead returning to Canada amid rising tensions over Ukraine. Belarus now says Russian forces will remain stationed in that country indefinitely. The move deepening concerns that Russia is planning to attack Ukraine and forcing yet another round of high-level diplomacy. Reggie Cecchini has the latest from Washington.
A menacing military might surrounding Ukraine is only growing more threatening as the Belarusian Defense Ministry performs an about-face announcing Russian military drills will be extended.
We believe that Putin has made his decision. Period.
Belarus claims it to be a response to Ukrainian aggression, but Western leaders are rife with concern.
The plan that we're seeing is for something that could be really the biggest war in Europe since 1945.
After weeks of shuttle diplomacy failed to make any breakthroughs, there's a renewed sense of urgency that could see the White House and Kremlin speaking again.
My job as a diplomat is to leave absolutely no stone unturned to see if we can prevent a war.
There are fears a pretext for invasion is already being drafted. The U.S. Embassy in Russia issuing an alert citing the potential for attacks in major centers and near the Ukraine border, while Russian-backed rebels are alleged to be opening fire in breakaway regions in the east, blaming Ukraine. The West has threatened wide-ranging consequences, but only in a reactive manner.
These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued.
With Russia's president holding his cards against his chest, the White House National Security Council met on Sunday to better understand how an attack could unfold.
I think you have to look at every possibility, which is what we do.
Intelligence has been laid bare for weeks, announcing Russian moves before they're played, a move experts call novel but risky.
If you keep saying the Russians are going to invade, and they don't, then of course it dilutes your own credibility as far as intelligence reveals are concerned.
Russia has repeatedly said it has no intentions of invading Ukraine, calling predicted dates a provocation. But with U.S. reports now suggesting that the Kremlin may be ready to move in, Western anxiety is palpable. Jeff?
Reggie Cecchini in Washington, thanks. Well wishes are pouring in tonight for Queen Elizabeth after Buckingham Palace confirmed she's tested positive for COVID-19. The 95-year-old monarch is said to be experiencing mild symptoms, and she's set to continue light duties this week. As Redmond Shannon explains, it comes after a difficult week for the royal family.
It was a sign of how British life is almost back to normal. Last Wednesday, the Queen met with representatives of the British Armed Forces in person at Windsor Castle.
Good morning, Your Majesty. How are you?
Well, as you can see, I can't move.
Their maskless meeting, including old-school handshakes offered by the visibly frail monarch. So Sunday's news of the Queen's positive COVID test has reminded those outside the castle walls that the pandemic can still be a cause for concern.
I'm just really upset, obviously. I think everyone is upset because I think everyone loves her.
As long as she's okay, that's all that matters, really, isn't it?
We want her to recover very quickly, and we want to see her back to herself again.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen has mild cold-like symptoms and is carrying out light duties as she isolates. It's not known when she contracted the virus. On February 10th, Prince Charles tested positive for COVID for the second time. He had met with his mother just 2 days before his positive test. The Queen has had 3 doses of a COVID vaccine and carried out most of her engagements online during the pandemic. She had been scaling back her duties in recent months after a short hospital stay in October and after spraining her back in November.
And often, even people who develop severe symptoms eventually start off mild. So I think any person of that age will need to be monitored fairly carefully.
Her diagnosis comes just days after Prince Andrew settled his civil lawsuit out of court with Virginia Giuffre, the woman who says he sexually assaulted her when she was 17. And after London police launched an investigation into Prince Charles's charitable foundation over allegations it offered a Saudi citizen royal honours and British citizenship. This past week has certainly made for a tough start to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year. She will turn 96 in April. Jeff?
Redmond Shannon in London, thanks. Coming up, deep divisions. How does Canada move forward in the wake of the Convoy crackdown?
Gotta make racist!
More than 100 people rallied in Toronto in support of residents in Ottawa. The crowd outside City Hall included various labor groups, and they condemned what they called the Convoy's display of hate and its targeting and harassment of communities in the nation's capital. In the wake of Ottawa's Convoy crackdown, Alberta's premier is launching a court challenge against the federal government's Emergencies Act.
The federal government's invocation of the Emergencies Act is an unnecessary and disproportionate measure that can violate civil liberties, invades provincial jurisdiction, and creates a very dangerous but precedent for the future, and it's not necessary.
Weeks of protests and counter-protests have exposed deep divisions in this country, particularly over pandemic public health measures. In Alberta, where the Coutts border crossing was blocked by demonstrators, the Edmonton police chief issued a plea to the public. Akin explains.
A divided community can be a dangerous community.
Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee has been calling for calm. He has described the political divisions highlighted by COVID-19 policy as a fire.
I'm asking and imploring political leaders, community members, everyone across the spectrum to help us put this fire out.
But the fires continue to rage. On Parliament Hill, divisions are clear. In Edmonton on Wednesday, a staff member at a Liberal MP's Edmonton office was attacked.
The person who did show up was a self-declared unvaccinated person who was there to protest, and then the assault took place.
Rhetoric from leaders has been just as heated. This response comes from a question from a Jewish MP.
Conservative Party members can stand with people who wave swastikas. They can stand with people who wave the Confederate flag.
The House Speaker admonished the Prime Minister for that remark. Later, former mayors criticized Premier Jason Kenney for fanning the flames of divisiveness after a tweet on pipeline protests and David Suzuki. University of Alberta sociologist Amy Kaler says it has been a long time since we've experienced this kind of a divide.
The first thing that comes to mind, maybe because it's almost exactly 100 years ago, is if you look at the dissent and divergent opinions and views around the First World War, conscription.
The good news here, Kaler says this time the divisions might not be as deep. We hear from those most upset, but Kaler says most people aren't like that. The bad news, all that noise could make it harder to find common ground.
Seeing these things almost gives a sort of permission effect for them to continue because, yeah, it's real. I saw somebody can do it. We've done it, so, let's keep doing it. And it'll take a while, I think, for that to die down.
Meaning, says Kaler, some views need to change. And like Chief McPhee says, so too does the rhetoric. Akin, Global News.
Still ahead, survival at sea. Rescuers find a man alive after days drifting aboard a burning ferry.
You're watching Global National.
Well, take a look at this startling sight in Chile. Thousands of dead sardines and anchovies washed up on a beach. Environmental officials are now investigating the cause, but locals say that low oxygen levels in deeper waters sometimes force the fish to swim closer to the shore in search of nutrients. A plane chartered by the Spanish government landed in Newfoundland today to repatriate the survivors and some of the victims of a shipwreck last week. The aircraft touched down in St. John's and is expected to return 3 sailors to Spain tomorrow, along with 5 of the 10 victims. The remaining bodies will be repatriated to Peru. 11 crew members of that commercial fishing boat are still missing. And a survivor has been pulled from a burning ferry off the coast of Greece. The Belarusian man was reported missing and presumed dead after the boat caught fire 3 days ago. He was found in the stern of the Italian-owned Euroferry Olympia. The body of another passenger was also recovered. 10 people are still unaccounted for. An investigation into the cause of that fire is now underway. Games over. Coming up, the closing ceremony and reflections from the Olympics in Beijing. It was a Winter Olympics plagued by COVID-19 fears, political controversies, and yet another Russian doping scandal. The Beijing Games themselves, though, led to some great results for Canadian athletes. Ross Lord reports.
Shedding a cloud of controversy, the Winter Games ended in elegance. True, television ratings for the Beijing Olympics were at rock-bottom levels, but many things that could have gone wrong didn't.
It was wonderful sport. It was joyous sport. The feared COVID outbreaks did not occur, so the organizers managed that very well.
Also managing very well, Team Canada, a medal count of 26. Though heavy on bronze and light on gold, that total compares favorably with Canada's count at previous Winter Games. And this country has new stars, like Ottawa speed skater Isabel Weideman, named the flag bearer at the closing ceremonies after winning a bronze, a silver, and a gold medal. Another Canadian athlete, hockey player Marie-Philippe Poulin, continued a run of Olympic excellence. Team captain Poulin scored the golden goal in the final game for the third time, propelling the Canadian women to an inspiring victory over their American arch-rivals. Delivering a relatively smooth Olympics allows Chinese officials to boast now that Beijing is the only city to host both the Summer and Winter Games. Some say it's a public relations ruse for a communist regime notorious for alleged human rights abuses.
It does cover over some major issues that do need to be dealt with. And I think moving forward, Canada needs to step up and think about those human rights issues.
The next Winter Olympics in 2026 will be held in the Italian cities of Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo. Sports fans will be hoping for less political strife and that the pandemic will feel like a distant memory. Ross Lord, Global News.
That is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight, your Canada is a real hoot. It's this snowy owl near Meaford, Ontario. We would love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Colleen Christie will be at the anchor desk with you tomorrow. Have a great night.